I want to do the right thing, but I would like to go and have sex with new women. I think it'd be really cool to go out and experience new women. That's what I but I crave it. Do I want it? Do I really want it? And another piece of that is that I was brainwashed on pornography from really young, from around 8 years old. I had been exposed to pornography. This is something I've never said publicly before, is that I was exposed to pornography at 8 years old. And I have been watching it almost every day since, and, pleased myself like that every day since. And I think it completely destroyed my perception on women. I think it took me away from reality about women and about sexuality. And I almost went all the way over the edge until I met Caitlin. And Caitlin and I, made love. And Caitlin, I appreciate your permission to be sharing this. It means a lot. It really means a lot to be able to share this, because I also want this to help people. Um, how's life? It's good. All right. Are you against pornography? I am against, yeah, I'm against irresponsible pornography. No, I'm not. I am against pornography that involves any social pressuring, sex slavery, obviously, anything that involves a human being treated as a piece of meat or coerced or pressured into doing something they don't want to do. I know personally, it's going to sound silly, but I've already had the conversation with Kate about, hey, what if we one day made responsible pornography? What if one day, because of the relationship we hold, if we, did not like a chatterbait type thing, but if we made love and videotaped it in a way where it would teach people how to, if they wanted to have just that regular traditional relationship that's gone to the wayside. I mean, every culture right now is hypersexualized, and there's not necessarily something wrong with being hypersexualized, but rather that we've lost our roots, and a tree without roots is kind of just flying away. And so I think a lot of time, at least me as a man and us men, from a traditional standpoint, we'll try to get into a relationship and we have all these sexual expectations of women. And then trust me when I say, got into bed and I found out that's just not how it works. And Caitlin felt so misunderstood, and she felt pressured. I mean to do it, and I didn't even know. And so I had to slow down a lot. I had to relax a lot. I had to learn to be much more tender. And that, learning that tenderness has changed me as a man. And, this is something that I haven't talked about, obviously. A lot of you have judged me and said, well, okay, you're bad or whatever. But you don't know the ways in which I've changed in a good way. And this is one of them. And so as far as pornography goes, to those of you who may be against pornography, please realize that in my opinion, I think it's too unregulated. I think it should be regulated and utilized in a way that could be healthy for people who may not have another opportunity to express themselves, you might say. Um, I think there's definitely more responsible ways to utilize pornography. And I think in today's society and in the future of society, I don't think there's going to be a way for us to really maybe get out of the house. So, I'm not going to sell myself in one direction or the other. I'm definitely not saying I'm pro pornography, but I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm saying that society is in a position right now of social shifting, and we don't necessarily know where it's going to. I think it's important to at least leave the cards on the table that may potentially save lives. And it might sound crazy to say that pornography could save lives, but if you only knew how sexually incompetent I felt as a child, as a teenager, quite literally, pornography was a part of what saved my manhood, because I probably would have ended up that serial killer type person if I had not found my way to, uh, sexual stimulus, and like that I felt. How do I say it? Like if I didn't feel some sort of control within the realm of my own body and my brain, then somebody else would have taken over my life, financially or otherwise. And I know that might be hard to like accept or explain. I don't think it did good for me overall, but it got me through. So maybe as like a short-term use. Um, Here's what I'll say is pornography does activate a part of the brain that activates a drug, and you can get addicted to it just like anything else. And it is probably the worst thing to get addicted to, because your mind will be warped in that state of vulnerability towards the things that you see, that any of us see, which I think is part of why that as I sit here with the most beautiful girl I've ever met, and the potential, like just this potential for an incredible relationship, that I'm sitting here and thinking about other women's bodies. Like it doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense, and it's not who I am. So I continue to fight that and say, well, no, it can't be that way. Who am I really? Who am I? And so growing up and gaining my competency and really finding my place as a man and knowing who I am has just been so important in this healing process for me. I don't know how things are going to look like in the future for other people, but for me, the future's pretty bright. Responsible choices are required in order to live. We've been very irresponsible as a society. I'm getting like Kate's approval here, which is part of what's pushing me forward to be this big, strong man. But I don't think it's healthy. I don't think that's healthy either. Because that's a drug too. It's like, oh, look at me, I'm so smart. I'm not saying I know anything. I'm doing my best. I'm proud of myself for coming this far. Whether or not pornography is the answer, I think just like anything else, there's no real answer that exists within a fantasy. Whether that fantasy is pornography, whether that fantasy is marijuana, whether that fantasy is a 9-to-5 job. I think there's a million different things that we can use, whether that fantasy is church, anything could be a drug. The human brain has the ability to make anything a drug for itself. Maybe that confuses you, maybe it doesn't. I'm just saying there are chemicals in our brain that if we decide to move in a particular direction, and there's a reward system based on that direction, it will affect our brain chemistry, and we will become slighted towards those things, and it becomes a drug. And so, yeah, I think that just like anything else, if it should exist, it would be done responsibly. It's not being done responsibly right now. I think everyone can agree on that clearly. But we still, when we get tired or bored or stressed or we just want variety, we turn on that phone and think nobody else is watching, but your brain knows. You know, forget religion. It's just about personal responsibility. Right or wrong, I just say be careful what you watch, because I can say that even some of the stuff that I watched it wasn't, like taboo in the sense of fetishes. But oftentimes what I'm noticing is the content that may be considered quote unquote better content is stuff that is like taboo. It is hard to find just traditional. Sorry, guys, I'm gonna have to end the broadcast. But it's hard to find healthy traditional content. It is oftentimes in the inappropriate taboos where you will find people that are more slighted to what the brain would naturally like. Larger breasts, things like that. A lot of it is usually found in the taboo, whereas the natural stuff is left to things that the natural male brain wouldn't be attracted to. And, I don't think that's on accident. So if you're going to delve in that realm, be very careful and understand that if you're going to watch something that is taboo in a way that is like super, super inappropriate, I'm not talking about fetishes. I think you guys know where I'm going with that. Turn your volume off, Just turn your volume off and I don't know. This conversation is taking a turn that I was not expecting. And I'm going to finish the conversation. I'm just going to say that I hope you guys see the courage in the conversation I'm having, that I care enough to, expose this about myself and have this conversation. Because if somebody doesn't have the conversation, no one will. And you can put me on the chopping block for it, or you can realize that I genuinely care for things to get better for everybody and not just myself. So. All right. I'm not embarrassed to talk about it. That's the difference. Everyone else is embarrassed to talk about this stuff, but I'm not.